My sister screamed that I was trying to kill her baby before the carrier even hit the concrete floor. I caught it 6 inches above the ground. That should have been the end of the story. Instead, Natalie ripped her son out of my arms. My mother slapped me in front of half the Costco food court, and somebody started recording just in time to make me look like the kind of woman people warn each other about. By Sunday morning, the video had more than 80,000 views. By Monday, the school district where I worked had placed me on leave. And by Tuesday, my own father was sitting at my kitchen table, asking me to admit that grief had made me dangerous. They all believed the worst 3 seconds of my life had been caught on camera. They were wrong. The camera that mattered had been recording for 17 minutes. And when that full video finally played at my sister's fundraiser, the room did not see a jealous, childless woman reach for a baby. They saw what my family had done before I ever touched him. My name is Rachel Mercer. I was 39 years old when my family turned an innocent accident into a public confession for something I had never done. It happened on a Saturday in October, the kind of bright Ohio morning when every parking lot looks crowded before 10. Natalie had texted me the night before asking if I would help her shop for Owen's fundraiser. She said Ethan was working, Mom's back was bothering her, and cases of bottled water were too heavy to manage with a 4-month-old. I almost said no. Not because of Owen. I loved my nephew from the first blurry ultrasound Natalie sent to the family group chat. I said no to myself because every favor for Natalie had a way of becoming proof that I owed her one more. But I had spent my whole life being the dependable sister, and dependable women often mistake exhaustion for selfishness. So I told her I would meet her at Costco at 10. If you are new here, welcome to Lasting Echoes. This is where we tell the stories that begin with one unbearable moment and end when the person everyone underestimated finally stops carrying the blame. Stay with me, because the slap in that store was not the betrayal that changed my life. The betrayal came later, when I learned my family had been waiting for an accident they could use. Natalie was already inside when I arrived. I found her near the seasonal aisle with our mother, Linda, and Owen's infant carrier balanced across the top of an oversized shopping cart. Balanced is the important word. The carrier was not clicked into anything. It was sitting sideways over the basket, one end resting on a cardboard case of sparkling water. I noticed because I had spent 19 years as an elementary school counselor noticing unsafe things before children did. Open gates, loose shoelaces, angry fathers at pickup. The silence a child makes when silence means more than quiet. I told Natalie the carrier looked unstable. She did not even glance down. She said Owen was fine. Our mother sighed as if I had criticized Natalie's parenting instead of a piece of plastic. Rachel, she said, Bobby's survived long before warning labels. That was Mom's favorite way to dismiss me. Turn concern into drama, then make drama my personality. I reached for the handle, intending to move the carrier into the large basket. Natalie pulled the cart back. Do not fuss over him, she said. You make me nervous when you fuss. There are sentences that sound ordinary until you learn they were rehearsed. At the time, I only felt the small, familiar sting. Natalie was 34, 5 years younger than me, and motherhood had given her a new language for the same hierarchy we grew up with. She was instinctive. I was anxious. She was warm. I was clinical. She was the woman people naturally gathered around. I was the one asked to arrange the chairs. We moved through the store collecting paper plates, canned soda, chips, cookies, and little plastic footballs for the charity raffle. The fundraiser was supposed to help with Owen's medical bills. He had been born 6 weeks early and spent 12 days in the neonatal intensive care unit. By October, he was healthy, gaining weight, and smiling at ceiling lights, but Natalie told everyone the bills had become crushing. She created a fundraising page with a photo of him under a knitted blue cap and a title about a family fighting for their miracle. I had already donated $3,000. I had also designed the flyers, booked the church fellowship hall, and persuaded 2 local restaurants to contribute gift cards. None of that bothered me. Owen had needed care. Natalie and Ethan were young parents. I knew how frightening a hospital envelope could feel even before it was opened. What bothered me was the house. Our grandmother, June, had left me her small brick ranch on Maple Street when she died the previous winter. Natalie believed it should have been sold and divided. Mom believed the same thing. Neither of them cared that Grandma had put only my name in the will, or that I had been the one who spent 5 years taking her to cardiology appointments, changing furnace filters, and sleeping on her sofa when she became afraid of the dark. The house was worth about $240,000. It was paid off. I did not live there. I had been slowly repairing it because I wanted to turn it into a low-cost counseling center for children whose families could not afford private therapy. Natalie called that selfish. She said a building could not matter more than a baby. 2 weeks before Costco, she asked me to sell it and give half the money to her for Owen's expenses. When I refused, Mom stopped speaking to me for 4 days. Dad sent a message saying family assets should solve family emergencies. I replied that Grandma had left instructions, Owen was insured, and I would gladly help them review every bill. Nobody sent me a bill. That should have warned me. Instead, I was pushing a flatbed cart toward the checkout while Natalie carried Owen and Mom followed with her purse tucked against her ribs. The store was loud. Forklifts beeped somewhere beyond the produce cooler. A blender demonstration whined near the pharmacy. Children negotiated for pizza slices. Every few seconds, the receipt checker at the exit drew a black line across another order and said thank you. We had almost reached the registers when Natalie said she forgot the diapers. She placed Owen's carrier back across the top of the cart. He was awake, looking up at the lights. Then she handed me a package of napkins and told me to make sure we had 6. I looked down to count them. Mom walked 3 steps away to answer her phone. And Natalie let go of the cart. The floor near the end cap sloped so slightly I had not noticed it. The cart began to roll. It moved perhaps 2 feet before the front wheels struck the wooden corner of a merchandise pallet. The impact was not violent. It did not need to be. The carrier slid sideways. I heard plastic scrape metal. I dropped the napkins and lunged. My left hip hit the cart. My right hand caught the carrier handle, but it twisted, and for one terrible instant Owen was tipped toward the floor. I got my other arm underneath him. The carrier struck my wrist, bounced once against my knee, and stopped in my arms just above the concrete. Owen began to cry. Natalie screamed. Not his name. Not ask if he was all right. She screamed, "You tried to drop my baby." People turned before I understood the words. I was still crouched on the floor, holding the carrier against my chest. My wrist burned. Owen was strapped inside, startled but untouched. I said the cart had rolled. Natalie grabbed the handle and yanked. I told her to wait because the carrier was tilted, and I did not want his neck to move suddenly. That was when she shouted the sentence that would be clipped, posted, captioned, and repeated by strangers who never knew my name. "Get your hands off him. You have always hated me for having a baby." The whole store seemed to inhale. I let go. Natalie lifted Owen out of the carrier and pressed him to her chest. He was crying harder now because she was crying. Mom rushed back. She looked at Natalie, looked at the baby, then looked at me on the floor. She did not ask what happened. She slapped me. The sound was astonishingly clean. My face turned with it. My glasses flew off and skidded beneath the edge of the pallet. Somebody gasped. A paper cup hit the floor behind me. Mom seized the collar of my cardigan and pulled me upright. 2 buttons tore loose. The thin blouse underneath split at the shoulder seam, exposing the top of my bra and the pale surgical scar that ran below my collarbone. I tried to cover myself. She slapped my hand away and demanded to know what kind of monster used a child to punish her sister. I remember faces more than words after that. A man holding a rotisserie chicken stared openly. A teenage girl had her phone raised. An older woman shook her head at me. A little boy in a red jacket watched from behind his father's leg. Natalie stood in the center of them with Owen against her shoulder, saying she knew this would happen. She knew I would finally snap. She said she had tried to be sensitive after my loss, but I could not stand watching her become a mother. My loss. 2 words, spoken loudly enough to turn the private ruin of my marriage into store entertainment. 6 years earlier, I had been pregnant for 11 weeks. My husband, David, and I had spent 4 of those weeks choosing names in whispers because we were afraid happiness might hear us and leave. Then one Thursday morning, there was no heartbeat. I lost the pregnancy. A year later, I lost the marriage. David wanted to try again. I could not make my body enter another room where hope might disappear on a screen. He called it shutting down. I called it surviving. Neither of us was completely wrong, but eventually we stopped reaching across the distance. Only my immediate family knew. Now strangers did. Natalie told them I had never recovered. Mom said she should have listened when Natalie warned her I was obsessed with Owen. The teenager's phone remained pointed at my face. I asked her to stop recording. She stepped backward and kept recording. A store employee arrived, then another. One of them, a woman named Celeste according to her badge, crouched beside the carrier and asked whether the baby appeared hurt. Natalie said she did not know because I had tried to throw him. Throw him. The accusation grew, while we were all still standing in the same minute. I told Celeste there were cameras. I pointed toward the black dome above the aisle and said the cart rolled. I asked her to call the police because I wanted a report. Mom gripped my torn cardigan and hissed that if the police came, my career would be over. Then she did something quieter and somehow crueler. She leaned close and told me to say it was an accident on both sides. She would say the slap was panic. Natalie would say she misunderstood. We could all leave before anyone got hurt. Before anyone got hurt. My cheek was swelling. My blouse was torn. My sister had accused me of attempting to harm an infant. Yet Mom spoke as if harm were a future event I might cause by refusing to disappear. I said no. Celeste asked all of us to come to the office near customer service. Natalie refused until a supervisor said emergency services had already been called. The crowd opened as we walked. I held my cardigan closed with one hand and carried my glasses in the other. One lens was scratched straight through the center. At the office door, Dad appeared. Mom had been speaking to him when the cart rolled. He had been waiting in the parking lot because he planned to help load the supplies. He looked from my face to Natalie's shaking body and asked what I had done. Not what happened. What I had done. Some betrayals arrive wearing the exact voice you expected. The paramedics examined Owen in a small room. His oxygen level was normal. He had no bruising, no swelling, no sign of impact. They recommended that Natalie contact his pediatrician and watch him closely, standard caution for any possible fall. The police spoke to us separately. I told an officer named Daniel Ruiz every detail I could remember. I told him the cart rolled, the carrier slipped, and I caught it. I showed him the red mark on my cheek and the torn shoulder of my blouse. I told him I wanted my mother's assault documented. He asked if I wanted to press charges. I looked through the narrow window in the office door. Mom sat beside Natalie, one arm around her. Dad stood over them. The 3 of them formed a small closed shape with no space for me. I said yes. That answer changed my family more than the slap. Officer Ruiz nodded and wrote it down. He said the store would preserve the footage and that investigators would review it. He warned me not to contact Natalie until they understood what happened. Then the store manager came in. His name was Mr. Patel. He apologized, offered me a clean employee sweatshirt, and said he had watched part of the security video. My whole body went still. I asked him what it showed. He glanced at Officer Ruiz before answering. He said the footage clearly showed the cart moving and me catching the carrier. But the camera angle did not show why the carrier had been unstable or what occurred immediately before Natalie put it down. Another camera covered that area, but the system had not finished exporting the file. It was enough to tell the police I had not tried to throw Owen. It should have been enough for my family. It was not. When Officer Ruiz told Natalie the preliminary video contradicted her statement, she changed her words. She said perhaps I had not pushed the carrier, but I had grabbed it too aggressively. Mom said my reaction still proved I had been waiting for an excuse to touch Owen. Dad asked if everybody could calm down and remember there was a frightened baby involved. Nobody apologized. As I walked out of the office wearing a gray Costco sweatshirt over my torn blouse, the teenage girl was gone. Her video was not. It went online before I reached my car. The first version was 27 seconds long. It began with Natalie shouting, "Get your hands off him. You have always hated me for having a baby." It showed me kneeling with the carrier. It showed Mom slap me. It showed my blouse tear. Then it ended with Natalie saying I had finally snapped. It did not show the cart roll. It did not show me catch Owen. It did not show the store manager tell police what the security camera had recorded. The caption said, "Woman tries to drop sister's baby at Ohio Costco after infertility jealousy." By the time I got home, I had 23 missed calls. 3 were from coworkers. 1 was from my principal. 19 were from numbers I did not know. I locked the door, closed every blind, and sat on my kitchen floor still wearing the employee sweatshirt. My cheek pulsed. My wrist had swollen. My phone kept lighting up on the counter like something alive trying to get inside. For almost an hour, I did nothing. Then a text appeared from Natalie. "Sell Grandma's house," she wrote, "and I will tell people this was a misunderstanding." That was the moment the accident ended. And the plan revealed itself. I read the message until the words lost their shape. Then I took a screenshot. I did not reply. People imagine revenge begins with anger. Mine began with a folder. I created one on my laptop and named it October 14. I saved Natalie's text, the link to the clipped video, photographs of my face, photographs of the torn blouse, and the discharge paper from urgent care showing a sprained wrist. I emailed everything to myself. Then I wrote down what happened while the order was still clear. Time, aisle, cart position, napkins on the floor, the sound of the carrier handle scraping metal, Mom's first words, Dad's first question, every detail. At 11 that night, Officer Ruiz called. He said Mr. Patel had completed the video export. There were 3 relevant angles. The police had reviewed them, and no footage showed me behaving aggressively toward Owen. One angle clearly showed the cart begin moving after Natalie released it. Another showed me catch the carrier before it struck the floor. I asked the question that had kept circling my mind. Was the carrier fastened to the cart? He said no. Then he paused. He told me the third camera showed something else, but he did not want to interpret motive over the phone. An investigator would follow up. The store could not release the footage directly to me while the police request was active, but it had been preserved. Something else. 3 words can open a room in your mind and let every fear walk in. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Natalie say I had always hated her for having a baby. Around 2 in the morning, I made the mistake of opening the comments under the video. Strangers called me barren, bitter, possessed, and dangerous. One person posted the name of the elementary school where I worked. Another found the counseling center proposal I had presented at a city meeting and wrote that someone like me should never be alone with vulnerable children. There were kind comments, too. A few people noticed that I appeared to be catching, not dropping, the carrier. One nurse wrote that Owen's straps remained secure and that the motion did not match the caption. Those voices were buried under thousands of people enjoying the simpler story. A childless older sister tried to hurt a baby out of jealousy. It fit inside one sentence. Truth rarely does. At 8 on Sunday morning, Principal Walsh called. She had known me for 11 years. We had sat together through lockdown drills, parent complaints, custody disputes, and the death of a second grader's father. I expected her to ask if I was all right. She did ask. Then she told me district policy required me to stay home while they assessed the situation. Parents were emailing. A local news page had shared the clip. Nobody was assuming guilt, she said, but the allegation involved a child. I understood. That did not make it hurt less. My job was the safest room in my life. Children came into my office carrying anger, fear, hunger, secrets, and occasionally frogs in their pockets. I kept granola bars in the bottom drawer and 3 sizes of clean socks in a cabinet. I knew which student needed the door open and which one needed silence before words. I had built trust 1 careful hour at a time. 27 seconds threatened all of it. I asked Principal Walsh to wait for the security footage. She said she would. Her voice softened, and she told me she had watched the clip frame by frame. She did not think it told the whole story. That sentence kept me upright. At 9, Dad called. I let it ring twice before answering. He said he wanted to come over. I told him I would meet him at Grandma's house instead. My own home felt too private. Maple Street was no longer a family refuge, but I was still learning to say that without feeling cruel. Dad arrived carrying coffee, as if caffeine could make the conversation ordinary. He stood in Grandma's kitchen, where the wallpaper still had tiny green strawberries and looked older than he had the day before. He asked to see my face. I said he could see it from where he stood. He flinched. For a moment, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he began explaining Mom. She had panicked. She saw Owen crying. She reacted as a grandmother. She had not meant to tear my clothes. She was devastated that I wanted charges. I asked if she was devastated that she hit me. Dad stared at his coffee. He said everybody had made mistakes. I asked him to name mine. He looked toward the back window. Grandma's bird feeder hung empty beyond the glass. Finally, he said I should not have held the carrier when Natalie wanted her baby back. I reminded him I had been keeping the carrier level. He said that was my interpretation. Then I showed him Natalie's text. Sell Grandma's house, and I will tell people this was a misunderstanding. He read it twice. His mouth tightened. I watched him meet the truth and begin searching for an exit. Maybe she was emotional, he said. Maybe she meant that selling the house would prove you supported Owen, and then people would understand you were not jealous. There it was, the family talent. Take any fact sharp enough to cut the story and wrap it in maybe until nobody had to bleed. I asked whether he knew Natalie had planned to use my pregnancy loss against me. He said no too quickly. I asked again. Dad sat at Grandma's little kitchen table. He placed both hands around the coffee cup, but did not drink. 3 weeks earlier, he said, Natalie had come to the house crying. She was overwhelmed by bills. She believed I cared more about Grandma's wishes than Owen's future. She said I had become fixated on the baby and sometimes looked at him in a way that frightened her. Dad and Mom discussed whether I was struggling. Without me. They discussed my miscarriage, my divorce, the counseling center, my refusal to sell, and the possibility that those things were connected. Mom said grief sometimes turns into resentment. Dad said they should be patient with me. Patient. I had donated money, organized a fundraiser, and shown up to carry water. They called that patience with me. I asked Dad one more question. Had Natalie ever said I threatened Owen, touched him improperly, or ignored a boundary? No. Had he ever personally seen me behave unsafely around any child? No. Had he believed her anyway? He rubbed one thumb along the paper seam of his cup. He said he did not know what he believed. I told him that uncertainty always seemed to benefit the person hurting me. Then I asked him to leave. He stood but did not move toward the door. He said the fundraiser was still happening Friday and that canceling would embarrass Natalie. He asked if I would release the church reservation, vendor list, and passwords for the donation page I had helped configure. I laughed. It came out once, dry and surprised. My father had just watched his daughter lose her job temporarily because of a lie, and he was asking her to finish the liar's event. I told him the church reservation was in Natalie's name. She could contact the vendors herself. The donation page belonged to her, but I would no longer administer it. Then I told him something I had never said aloud. I was not the emergency department for this family. He left the coffee behind. On Monday, the story reached local television. They did not name me, but they did not need to. They blurred my face over footage already seen by most of the county. The anchor said police were investigating an altercation involving an infant at a warehouse store. Natalie's friend Kayla gave an interview from her car and said the family had worried about my behavior for weeks. I had met Kayla twice. Once at Natalie's wedding and once at her baby shower. At the shower, she asked me to take a picture of her beside the balloon arch. That was the full history from which she diagnosed my dangerous obsession. The district emailed staff asking them not to comment publicly. Principal Walsh sent me a private message saying to hold steady. At noon, a woman named Marisol Vega called. She introduced herself as an attorney. Mr. Patel, the Costco manager, was her brother-in-law. He had not shared restricted details, she said, but he told her I might need someone who understood defamation, employment issues, and protective orders. I almost refused, because needing a lawyer felt like agreeing my life had become a case. Then another unknown number left a voicemail calling me a baby killer. I met Marisol that afternoon. She had a narrow office above a dentist and the calmest voice I had heard since Saturday. She listened without interrupting. She reviewed Natalie's text, my photographs, and the police report number. Then she asked for the fundraiser link. I showed it to her. She read the total aloud. $48,612. I stared at the screen. The last time I checked, the page had raised $19,000. The new donations poured in after the Costco video. Natalie had updated the fundraiser Sunday night. The update said her family now faced a second crisis because a close relative, emotionally destabilized by infertility, had endangered Owen in public. She asked for help with medical evaluations, home security, legal protection, and a possible move. She did not use my name. She linked the video. Marisol asked whether I had records of the medical costs the fundraiser supposedly covered. I told her Natalie never showed them to me. She asked whether I knew who filmed the viral clip. I said no. She froze the video on the teenage girl's reflection in a freezer door, then enlarged the frame. The girl wore a purple jacket with the logo of North Valley High School. Marisol said finding her was a job for the police, not us. But if she had recorded more than she posted, the original file mattered. So did the identity of whoever supplied the caption. She sent a preservation request to the social platform, another to the local news page, and a formal request for the full Costco video through the proper legal process. She also advised me to send one short written statement to the district. No social media defense, no family argument, no interview. Evidence first. That was exactly the language I needed. On Tuesday morning, Officer Ruiz called again. The infant carrier incident was no longer being investigated as possible misconduct by me. The footage had established that I caught Owen after the cart moved. The department was reviewing my assault complaint and Natalie's statements. Then he asked if I could come to the station. The third camera had recorded the family near a display of patio heaters 17 minutes before the accident. There was no audio. There did not need to be. On the screen, Natalie stood beside the cart while Mom held Owen. Natalie looked around, bent over the carrier, and pulled at the small release mechanism beneath its base. Then she lifted the carrier out of the cart's child seat area and placed it sideways across the basket. Mom handed Owen back. Natalie strapped him into the carrier. They continued shopping. I watched the sequence 3 times. It did not show Natalie planning a fall. It did not show Mom telling her to create an accident. It did show that the carrier's unsafe position had not been careless ignorance. Natalie had deliberately changed it after I warned her. Officer Ruiz said the footage became more concerning when combined with the text she sent me. He had forwarded both to a detective. I asked whether Mom had known. He said the video could not answer that. Then he played another segment. This one was taken near the registers, less than a minute before the cart rolled. Mom stepped away with her phone. Natalie placed the carrier down, handed me the napkins, looked toward the camera dome, and pushed the cart slightly with her fingertips before releasing it. The movement was tiny. Maybe an inch. The slope did the rest. My stomach turned. I asked him to play it again. Natalie set the carrier. Napkins, look up, touch cart, release. Again. Carrier, napkins, camera, push. The accident I had blamed on the floor had been given help. Officer Ruiz was careful. He said video alone did not reveal what she expected to happen. She might have intended the cart to move only enough for me to grab it. She might have wanted a frightened reaction she could characterize as unstable. She might not have understood how quickly the carrier could slide. But she had created the hazard. And after I saved her child from it, she accused me. My first feeling was not anger. It was terror. Owen could have hit the floor. He could have been injured because his mother wanted a scene strong enough to force my hand. Whatever story Natalie told herself, she had placed a 4-month-old at the center of it. I asked Officer Ruiz what would happen. He said the evidence would go to the prosecutor and Child Services would receive a report. He could not promise an outcome. Investigations take time. Intent is difficult to prove. The fundraiser and text could matter, but each agency would make its own decisions. An unfinished outcome is a hard thing to live inside. People want justice to arrive like a judge's gavel. Most of the time it arrives as a file number, a returned call, and the instruction to wait. I waited for 3 hours. Then Ethan called. My brother-in-law's voice shook so badly I could barely understand him. He asked whether the police had the store footage. I told him to speak with the detective. He said Natalie had thrown him out. I did not answer. He told me he had known she wanted the Maple Street house. He had not known about the cart. He thought the plan was to make me look selfish at the fundraiser so relatives would pressure me to sell. He thought she was going to talk about bills and show everyone how much they owed. I asked what he meant by plan. Ethan began to cry. 3 weeks before Costco, Natalie created a group message with Mom, Dad, Kayla, and him. The title was Save Owen's Future. At first, it contained fundraiser tasks. Then Natalie began writing about me. She said I was using Grandma's will to punish her for having the family I wanted. She proposed an intervention at the fundraiser. Mom suggested they remind people about my miscarriage, so my refusal would make emotional sense. Kayla suggested someone record it in case I became hostile. Dad wrote that public pressure would only make things worse. Then he stayed in the chat. Ethan said he objected when Natalie proposed using the fundraiser microphone. She told him not to be weak. The house could erase their debt and give them a down payment. I asked how much medical debt they actually had. He went silent. After insurance adjustments and a hospital assistance program, they owed $6,840. I had given them $3,000. The original fundraiser had already raised $19,000. They had enough. They had more than enough. I asked where the money went. Ethan said Natalie paid off 2 credit cards, put a deposit on a luxury SUV, and transferred $15,000 into an account he could not access. The new donations were still coming. He said he had screenshots of everything. I told him to send them to the detective and his own lawyer. He asked if he could send them to me too. Marisol told me not to coach him or promise anything, so I said only that he should preserve the truth and put Owen first. An hour later, 112 screenshots arrived. I did not open all of them at once. The first few were logistics: chairs, raffle baskets, soda, volunteers. Then my name appeared. Natalie, Rachel will say no if we ask privately. She likes control too much. Mom, She has always confused being useful with being in charge. Kayla, then do it with witnesses. People behave differently when everyone is watching. Ethan, this is supposed to help Owen, not attack Rachel. Natalie, helping Owen means getting the house sold. Dad, June left it to Rachel. We need to be careful. Mom, June was manipulated at the end. Natalie, Rachel has never gotten over losing her chance. Everyone knows it. If she refuses to help an actual baby, people will finally see why. I stopped reading. Actual baby. As if the child I lost had been imaginary. As if grief revoked my right to own anything my sister wanted. I walked through Grandma's house until I reached the small back bedroom. I had stripped the wallpaper there and painted the walls a soft blue-gray. It was supposed to become a play therapy room. Shelves for dolls, blocks, puppets, art supplies. A place where children could tell the truth without having to say it directly. I sat on the bare floor and cried for the first time since Costco. Not delicate tears, not one shining drop for a camera. I cried with my whole body because my family had taken the most private pain I carried and converted it into a sales strategy. For years, I had believed they were careless with me. Carelessness would have hurt less. They had been precise. When I could breathe again, I returned to the screenshots. One exchange was from Friday night, hours before Costco. Natalie, she agreed to shop. I knew she would. Mom, do not start anything in the store. Natalie, relax. I only need her wound up before Friday. Kayla, get something on video if she lectures you about the carrier again. Mom, she will. Rachel cannot help correcting people. Dad, leave the baby out of this. Natalie, nobody is putting Owen in anything. It is just shopping. Dad had warned them. Then he waited in the parking lot. That was the implied betrayal made plain. My father had not known about the rolling cart, but he knew they wanted a confrontation. He came anyway. He saw my torn clothes and asked what I had done because the answer had been prepared for him before he entered the store. The final screenshots were from after the video went viral. Kayla, this is huge. Donations jumped 10,000. Mom, take down the miscarriage part. That was private. Natalie, too late. It is why people believe it. Dad, tell the police the truth tonight. Natalie, the truth is Rachel grabbed him. Ethan, she caught him. I saw the store manager tell you. Natalie, pick a side. Then, at 8:42 Sunday evening, 11 minutes before she updated the fundraiser. Natalie, if Rachel wants this to stop, she knows what it costs. I sent the screenshots to Marisol. She called me immediately and said two things. First, do not contact my family. Second, Friday's fundraiser was no longer merely a family event. It was connected to the public allegation, the donations raised from it, and the people who had helped spread it. Canceling quietly would let Natalie replace one story with another. I asked what she was suggesting. Marisol said she was not suggesting revenge. She was suggesting correction. The church had a projection system. The local news station planned to attend. And Natalie was still advertising the fundraiser as a night to protect Owen from two crises. If the police and store authorized release of the relevant footage by then, and if the evidence could be presented without compromising any investigation, the truth would have an audience. The same kind of audience my family had chosen for the lie. I looked around Grandma's unfinished playroom. Then I told Marisol I would not ambush anyone. I would send Natalie one chance to correct everything herself. Marisol drafted the letter. Retract the accusation, remove the edited clip, correct the fundraiser, return or freeze donations raised using false claims, apologize publicly. Do not contact me except through counsel. The deadline was Thursday at noon. Natalie responded in 9 minutes. Her email contained one sentence. Give me half the house, and we can both stop pretending you are the victim. Thursday at noon passed without a retraction. By 3, the fundraiser page had crossed $61,000. Natalie posted a photograph of herself holding Owen beside a darkened window. The caption said she would not be silenced by people with money, property, or lawyers. She invited the community to stand with a mother protecting her child. She had transformed my refusal to surrender a house into evidence that I was powerful enough to fear. But evidence had begun moving too. The police confirmed in writing that the store video showed me preventing the carrier from falling. Costco, after consulting its legal department, authorized a short set of clips to be released through Marisol because false public claims about an incident on its property were continuing to solicit money. The fundraiser platform froze withdrawals while it reviewed the medical and safety claims. Principal Walsh received the police update and told me the district investigation could move quickly once it obtained the footage. Then the teenager who filmed the viral video came forward. Her name was Emery Collins. She was 16, and she had not written the caption. Emery told Officer Ruiz that she recorded for almost 4 minutes. When she got home, she sent the file to a private student group with the message, "Something awful happened at Costco." Her older cousin followed Natalie online, recognized her, and forwarded the clip to Kayla. Kayla cut it to 27 seconds. Kayla wrote the infertility caption. Emery had asked her to take it down after commenters identified my school. Kayla blocked her. The full phone video began 5 seconds after I caught Owen, so it did not prove how the carrier moved. But it captured everything after. Mom leaning close to offer the mutual accident deal. Me asking for police. Mr. Patel saying the store video showed the cart roll. Natalie hearing him, then turning toward a new cluster of shoppers and repeating that I tried to throw her baby. It also captured something I had forgotten. As the employee led us toward the office, Natalie passed Mom and whispered, "She will sell now." Emery's phone caught the words. Quietly, clearly. Marisol asked whether I still wanted to attend the fundraiser. For the first time, I hesitated. I had imagined walking into that fellowship hall with proof and watching certainty leave my family's faces. In imagination, justice feels clean. Nobody interrupts. Your voice never shakes. Every person who doubted you understands at the same instant, and pain changes sides as neatly as people changing seats. Real life is not that obedient. There would be neighbors, church members, parents from my school, cameras, and a baby who had already been used as scenery for too many adult choices. There was a risk that showing the footage would turn Owen's danger into entertainment again. I told Marisol I did not want his face displayed. We edited nothing that changed sequence or meaning, but we covered Owen's image and removed audio of his crying where it was not necessary. The original files remained preserved. We prepared a timeline with only dates, direct messages, and full exchanges. No dramatic music, no red circles, no slow motion. Truth did not need production. I also called Pastor Green, who supervised the fellowship hall. He had seen the viral clip and Natalie's fundraiser update. When Marisol explained that donations might have been solicited through false claims at an event on church property, he agreed the correction had to occur before any more money was collected. He offered to cancel. I said no. Canceling would create one more blank space Natalie could fill. Friday evening, the church parking lot was full by 6. Blue balloons were tied to the railings. A banner above the entrance read, "Stand strong with OWEN." Volunteers in matching shirts sold raffle tickets beside the door. The smell of pulled pork, coffee, and supermarket sheet cake drifted into the hallway. I arrived through the side entrance with Marisol and Officer Ruiz. He was not there to arrest anyone or stage a spectacle. Pastor Green had requested an officer because of the crowd and the previous assault. Ruiz stood near the back in plain clothes. From behind the kitchen partition, I could hear people talking about me. Some said it was brave of Natalie to hold the event. One woman wondered whether I had been arrested. A man said women who never have children can become strange around bobbies. Another voice replied that grief does not turn people into monsters. My body reacted before my mind. My palms became damp. The scar beneath my collarbone tingled where my torn blouse had exposed it. I was suddenly back beneath fluorescent store lights, trying to cover myself while strangers decided what kind of woman I was. Marisol touched my elbow. She asked if I wanted to leave. I said no. Then I corrected myself. I said I wanted to stay, but I did not want to become them. She told me that was why we had brought documents instead of insults. At 6:30, Pastor Green opened the event with a short prayer. Natalie sat at the front table holding Owen. Mom sat on one side, Dad on the other. Ethan was absent. Kayla moved along the wall filming vertical video for Natalie's page. My mother wore cream, the color she chose when she wanted to look gentle. My father looked toward every door except the one I was behind. Pastor Green welcomed the crowd, thanked the restaurants and volunteers, and said the evening's program had changed. Before donations or raffles continued, he said, important information related to the fundraiser needed to be addressed. Natalie stood immediately. She asked what information. The room shifted, chairs creaked. Kayla lowered her phone. Pastor Green said Rachel Mercer had requested an opportunity to respond to the public statements being used to promote the event. My name moved through the hall in whispers. Natalie said I was not allowed near her child. Mom rose and demanded that Pastor Green protect the family. That was when I walked out. I wore a navy jacket over a high-necked blouse. My wrist was braced. The bruise along my cheek had faded from red to yellow, but it was still visible beneath makeup. I had considered covering it completely. I decided not to. The room went silent in layers. The people nearest me first, then the rows ahead as heads turned. A school parent near the aisle covered her mouth. One of my coworkers whispered my name. Natalie pulled Owen closer and shouted for someone to call the police. Officer Ruiz stepped into view. He said calmly that he was already there. For 1 second, Natalie looked relieved. She pointed at me and said I was violating her safety. Ruiz told her no order prohibited me from entering a public charity event. Then he asked everyone to remain calm. Mom moved toward me. Marisol stepped between us and introduced herself as my attorney. Mom stopped. It was the first boundary she had respected all week, and it belonged to someone she could not train to feel guilty. I walked to the microphone. My prepared statement was 6 pages long. I did not read it. I looked at the blue balloons, the raffle baskets, the donation QR codes printed on every table, and the child asleep against my sister's chest. Then I said the only thing the room needed first. I did not try to hurt Owen. Natalie laughed sharply. I asked Pastor Green to play the first video. The screen behind me lit up with the Costco aisle. There was no sound. A timestamp glowed in the corner. People watched Natalie remove the carrier from its secure position. They watched her place it sideways across the cart after I expressed concern. They watched her look toward me, then continue shopping. The clip ended. Natalie said it proved nothing. Parents move carriers every day. I agreed. By itself, it proved only that she had created an unsafe position after being warned. Then we played the second clip. Carrier, napkins, look at camera, fingertips on cart, release. The cart rolled. The carrier slid. I lunged. Even with Owen's image obscured, the motion made the room gasp. My knee hit concrete. My arms closed beneath the carrier. It stopped before the floor. The video froze there. Me kneeling. Me holding the baby I had been accused of trying to throw. Nobody spoke. I told them the police had reviewed the complete footage. The store had reviewed it. The school district had received confirmation. Every available angle showed the same thing. I caught him. A woman near the back began to clap once, then stopped, as if applause felt wrong. Natalie stood rigid beside the front table. She said the cart moved by accident, and I still refused to return Owen when she asked. So we played Emery's full phone video. The room watched Mom slap me. They watched her tear my blouse. They heard Natalie reveal my miscarriage to strangers. They heard me ask for the police, and my mother urge me to call both sides an accident. They heard Mr. Patel say the camera showed me catch the carrier. They heard Natalie continue the accusation anyway. Then, just before the office door closed, they heard her whisper to Mom, "She will sell now." This time, the room did not gasp. It went absolutely still. Silence can mean disbelief. It can mean shame. It can mean a story losing all the oxygen that kept it alive. Mom sat down. Dad covered his face with one hand. Kayla began moving toward the side door. Officer Ruiz asked her to remain because a detective wanted to speak with her about the edited file and fundraiser representations. He did not touch her. He did not need to. Every face in the room turned toward the phone she was still holding. Natalie said the whisper had been taken out of context. I asked what context made it acceptable. She said I had forced the family into desperation. I was sitting on an empty house while her son had medical bills. She said Grandma never meant to choose me over her. She said I had used old age, proximity, and paperwork to steal an inheritance that morally belonged to both of us. For the first time that evening, I looked directly at my sister. I told her Owen's verified unpaid medical balance was $6,840 before my $3,000 contribution was applied. The crowd stirred. I told them the fundraiser had raised more than $19,000 before Costco and more than $61,000 after the false allegation. I said the platform had frozen the funds pending review. I did not accuse her of a crime. I did not need to. I displayed the hospital assistance statement Ethan had legally obtained from their joint records, with private medical details removed and the fundraiser totals captured by date. Then I displayed Natalie's message to me. Sell Grandma's house, and I will tell people this was a misunderstanding. The sentence filled the screen. Black letters on white. No interpretation required. Mom stood again. She said family messages were private and that I was humiliating my sister in front of the community. I looked at the fatting bruise she had put on my face. Then I asked her where privacy had been when she exposed my body in Costco. Where had privacy been when Natalie announced my miscarriage? Where had family dignity been when they used that loss to make strangers believe I would harm a child? Mom opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I did not show every screenshot. Revenge would have shown all 112. Correction required 6. The screen displayed the plan for a public intervention. Kayla recommending witnesses. Mom suggesting my miscarriage would explain my refusal. Natalie saying helping Owen meant getting the house sold. Dad warning them to leave the baby out of it, then remaining part of the plan. When my father's message appeared, he lowered his hand. He stood slowly. Dad had spent my whole life trying to make peace by asking the most reasonable person to absorb the unreasonable one. I watched him reach the place where neutrality finally became too expensive to pretend. He turned toward the room and said he had known they planned to pressure me. Mom said his name like a warning. He continued. He said he did not know Natalie would move the cart. He did not know she would risk Owen. But he knew they intended to use my miscarriage and the fundraiser to corner me. He waited in the parking lot. He saw the aftermath and blamed me before asking what happened. Then he looked at me. He said I was not confused, Rachel. I was a coward. It was not enough to repair anything. But it was true. And truth was the only currency accepted in that room now. Natalie began crying. She said nobody understood what motherhood had done to her. She had been terrified since Owen's premature birth. She woke at night certain he would stop breathing. Every bill felt like a threat. Every time she looked at the Maple Street house, she saw safety I was withholding. Part of me wanted to go to her. That instinct embarrassed me until I understood it was not weakness. I loved my sister. Love does not always die when trust does. Sometimes it remains, stripped of authority, unable to make decisions for you anymore. I told Natalie fear could explain why she wanted security. It could not explain why she endangered Owen to obtain it. It could not explain the edited video, the fundraiser update, or the offer to trade my reputation for a deed. And it would not make me give her the house. That was when she finally lost control. She accused me of enjoying this. She said I had always waited for a chance to look superior. She swept a row of raffle tickets off the table and told the crowd to leave if they believed me. Owen woke and began to cry. Before Natalie could turn him into another shield, Ethan entered through the rear doors. He walked directly to her, held out his arms, and asked to take his son somewhere quiet. Natalie refused. Pastor Green asked everyone else to remain seated. Officer Ruiz called the child services caseworker who was waiting nearby as part of the safety plan arranged after the video review. There was no dramatic seizure, no handcuffs, no stranger ripping a baby from his mother. There was a careful conversation in the church nursery with both parents, a caseworker, and an officer. That mattered to me. Owen had experienced enough spectacle. While they left the hall, Pastor Green announced that no further donations would be collected. Anyone who had donated through the church could request a refund, and all funds would remain secured until an independent accounting was complete. People began approaching me. The man who had said childless women become strange could not meet my eyes. The school parent who covered her mouth hugged me, then apologized for doing it without asking. A coworker said the staff had believed me. An older woman pressed my hand between hers and said she had shared the clipped video with her daughter. She promised to share the correction just as quickly. I thanked her. Then I asked her not to share Owen's face. The local reporter requested an interview. Marisol said we would provide the evidence and a written statement, nothing more that night. The statement was 3 sentences. The complete video shows that I prevented my nephew from falling after his carrier was deliberately placed unsafely. I ask everyone who shared the edited accusation to correct it and protect the privacy of the child involved. I will address the harm done to my work and reputation through appropriate channels. No insult. No diagnosis. No promise that my sister would regret crossing me. She already did. The correction reached more people than the lie by Sunday afternoon. It did not erase the lie. Nothing does. Search my name long enough and some version of that first caption still appears. There will always be people who watch only the slap and never the evidence. There will always be strangers who prefer a woman-shaped monster to a complicated family. But on Monday morning, the district reinstated me. Principal Walsh met me at the staff entrance before sunrise. She handed me my office keys and said the board had concluded there was no basis for discipline. The district also issued a public statement that the allegation was contradicted by complete security footage. When the first bell rang, I was sitting behind my desk. A 4th grader named Micah appeared at the door holding a paper cup with a dying spider plant. He said nobody watered it while I was gone. Then he asked if I had been sick. I told him something untrue had happened, and adults needed time to understand it. He nodded with the solemn wisdom children sometimes carry and said adults are slow with obvious things. Then he handed me the plant. I laughed for the first time in 9 days. The legal outcomes took longer. Mom accepted responsibility for striking me and entered a court-approved diversion program that included counseling, community service, and a no-contact order. I did not ask for jail. I asked for a record that said her panic did not make my body public property. The review involving Natalie was more complicated. The prosecutor examined the cart footage, her messages, and the fundraiser. Child Services created a safety plan for Owen, while Natalie underwent an evaluation and parenting supervision. Ethan moved with the baby to his parents' home for a time under that plan. The fundraiser platform returned many donations and held the disputed balance while investigators and donors sorted out what had been represented. I will not pretend every question produced a satisfying answer. Some proceedings remained private. Some consequences were administrative rather than cinematic. Natalie was not marched away beneath flashing lights. The law could prove actions more easily than the exact thought inside her head when her fingers touched that cart. But unfinished did not mean empty. She lost control of the story. She could no longer trade my silence for property. She could no longer call the accident mine. Kayla removed the clip and posted a correction admitting she had cut the video and written the caption without witnessing the beginning. The local news station aired the security footage and linked the district statement. Emery received no punishment. I wrote her a note thanking her for preserving the original, and I told her one mistake made in shock did not have to become a lifetime identity. Dad wrote me letters. I did not answer the first 3. The 4th did not ask for forgiveness. It contained a list of every moment he could remember when he had asked me to be reasonable so someone else could avoid being accountable. Birthday dinners, grandma's care, my wedding, my divorce, the house, Costco. At the bottom he wrote, I called it peace because I was never the one paying for it. I kept that letter. Months later, I agreed to meet him in a coffee shop. Not my house, not grandma's kitchen, neutral ground. We are not repaired. Repair is not a word I trust when people use it like an eraser. We are building something smaller and more honest. He does not carry messages from Mom. He does not explain her feelings to me. When he begins a sentence with she only, I stand up. He has learned to stop before those words now. I have not spoken to Natalie directly. Through attorneys, she sent an apology that began with the pressure I was under. I returned it. An apology that introduces itself through an excuse is only a defense wearing softer clothes. Perhaps one day she will tell the truth without asking it to earn her something. Until then, distance is not cruelty. It is the locked door between love and access. And the house on Maple Street. I kept it. The following spring, the first children walked through its blue front door. We named the program June House Family Center. One bedroom became the play therapy room. The dining room became a place for support groups. Grandma's kitchen kept its strawberry wallpaper because some things deserve to remain exactly where love placed them. Beside the entrance hangs a small brass plaque. It does not carry my name. It says, no one has to surrender their story to be safe here. The $3,000 I had given Natalie covered almost half of Owen's verified balance. Through a neutral administrator, I paid the rest directly to the hospital. Not because Natalie deserved another rescue. Because Owen deserved to grow up without his medical care, becoming a weapon between adults. That was the difference between revenge and becoming what hurt me. My revenge was not taking her child, destroying her future, or making her stand half-dressed while strangers recorded. My revenge was refusing the role she wrote for me. Bitter sister, failed woman, family bank, convenient villain. I returned every name that was not mine. And I kept what was. My work. My house. My grief. My voice. If you stayed with Rachel to the end, welcome again to Lasting Echoes, where the truth may arrive quietly, but it never arrives empty-handed. Tell us in the comments what you would have done when that text appeared. Stayed silent, walked away, or let the full video play. Subscribe for more stories about family betrayal, earned justice, and the moment a person everyone counted out finally counts themselves in. And remember this. A public lie moves fast because it only needs a villain. The truth moves slower because it carries every detail. But when the whole room finally watches from the beginning, the person on the floor may not be the monster in the story. She may be the only reason the baby never hit it.